Hi, I'm Jeff Ranke, Editorial Director of Manufacturing.net and Manufacturing Business Technology. Welcome to Security Breach. The latest high-profile hack of Dole Foods reinforces the need to upgrade operational security, and not just for the manufacturer, the distributors, logistics providers, retailers, and end users that rely so heavily on the role manufacturing plays from both social and economic perspectives are beginning to understand how critical and far-reaching the effects of a production-ceasing hack truly are. Now, according to a survey from Nozomi Networks, 63% of respondents classify current cybersecurity threats as targeting industrial control systems as high, severe, or critical. The survey goes on to suggest that the biggest challenges to responding to these threats stem from legacy and aging OT technology, a lack of compatibility between traditional IT security and modern control systems, and a lack of OT security expertise. This would support findings from Fortinet that 93% of manufacturers responded to at least one OT intrusion between 2021 and 2022, and 78% dealt with more than 3 such incidents. Additionally, the firm found that 61% of intrusions targeted OT assets. Our guest for today's episode will have a unique take on these and other challenges associated with OT security. But before we talk to our guest for this episode, we're excited to announce that Security Breach is being sponsored by Rockwell Automation. For more information on their cybersecurity solutions, you can go to rockwellautomation.com. At this time, it's my pleasure to welcome Carlos-Raul Sanchez to Security Breach. He's the Director of Operational Technology at Fortinet, a leading provider of OT cybersecurity solutions. Carlos, thanks so much for joining us today. You know, when we look at the industrial sector, operational technologies has not been the focus, or at least the primary focus, from a cybersecurity perspective in the past. It is now, it's starting to ramp up. So as you're working with manufacturers, what are you seeing as some of the key vulnerabilities, and are they at least aware of a lot of these issues kind of going into these types of projects?
Yeah, that's a really good question because operational technology has been around for quite some time. However, it wasn't called that. It was just called industrial security. And all the devices that were produced, to either control pressure, velocity, temperature, flow, they were designed with one purpose in mind, and that purpose didn't include cybersecurity. In the past, most of those devices or most of those controls, they existed, either in a segregated environment, or they were all the data collection was not done real time. So that's why they were not that appealing to the traditional hacker that they're looking for. To extract data, extract something that can be sold. And in some instances, of course, harm the operation, harm people. But what we see now is that because of the need for immediate data or immediate access to data, we see that, the traditional, what we call, I hate to do the air quote, but, the quote unquote hacker is taking interest in that data as it moves across. Then there's also data at rest. So, those are other sources. But what we see is that in general, the OT community is becoming more, it actually is a practice now. We didn't used to have a practice or anything such thing as OT. But now we have, security being at the forefront because all these devices, in most instances, are controlling critical infrastructure. So, they're a great target for a ransom.
Yeah. So are manufacturers, are they aware of more of these things? Are they finding them out? Are they being more proactive? In your experience in working with them, how have they been receptive to trying to probe and identify some of their own vulnerabilities and responding to them?
Yeah, they're being a little bit more proactive now when things before they go to print, but, before devices go to the production line, security goes into, they address those vulnerabilities, so they try to address the vulnerabilities. There's a lot more of a watchful eye, if you want to call it that, in terms of the vulnerabilities that they appear in production devices. Some of the legacy stuff, is still, being modernized as we go into this journey of digital transformation. We see some of those devices being replaced with modern devices, and then addressing other vulnerabilities that for whatever reason that were not addressed in the past. So I think that there is more a more collective conscience in the business community as to the amount of vulnerabilities and the potential for new vulnerabilities as technology advances in all these devices.
Yeah. There's a ton of internal and kind of obvious benefits from all these operational technology investments that manufacturers have been making, but it also sort of gives them a much broader sort of field where they can be attacked, more vulnerabilities potentially springing up because there's simply more operational technology that's connected and hopefully talking to each other. As a result, this opens up, like you said, or like we were talking about, a bigger battlefield potentially. Are hackers now, are they going at something with a target, or are they probing everything and just sort of seeking looking where the soft spots are and attacking those? What are you seeing there? Is it more targeted or more general?
Well, I will say a little column A, a little column B. Hackers, used to be opportunistic because again, they will, like you mentioned, they probe and probe and probe. When they found the opening, they went for it. But now it's a little bit more organized. And in fact, we have syndicates out there that's all they do for a living. They're given bounties, and they say, hey, go after company X. If you find a vulnerability, find a way in, you get paid this much money. So things are changing in that landscape as well. We see a lot more of hackers, exploiting known vulnerabilities, going for new targets. Some instances, going to the point that even if they insider threat as well. They're hacking people, if you want to believe that. But there's people. We are a target. We are a target. In some instances, lack of process and procedures to deal with data. That is a vulnerability in itself.
No, that's a great point. There's a lot of different types of attacks that manufacturers are being exposed to. We've seen huge spikes in ransomware, malware, and phishing. Is there one of those particular attacks that really sort of has lit up your radar screen, or you're seeing any new tactics or players sort of coming into to the spectrum of things?
Yeah, we'll talk about two particular cases or two things that we see a lot. Ransomware is rampant. Now spear phishing going out. Email is by far, the number one vector of attack. Yeah, there is your what I will call your more traditional, intrusion based on a vulnerability from the outside. But come on, if you click on that link that has all the pretty lights and all that stuff, and it takes you to this site, and you continue to say yes and yes and yes without looking, and you see yourself in a victim of a ransom. That definitely is, I will say, the most prevalent attack. The second thing that I will see is, and people don't take IT teams or OT teams rather, and cybersecurity teams don't take notice, is when there is a small change in the operation of the environment. Like something is starting to go faster, it's starting to go slower. That might be indicative that you're already being breached. And I say these guys and these syndicates are extremely patient. They have nothing but time on their hands. And frankly, they have they fish with 15 lines at the same time. Somebody's gonna bite. So when they see this, and in some instances, the cybersecurity teams, they might find it with the controls in place. And then you run and you fix and you try to fix it. Well, to me, when I see what you do, when there's a condition of that nature, that just give me a window or give me a good picture of how is your cybersecurity working? How is your team? What is the approach to cybersecurity? Is it reactive? What are we doing after? So yeah, there might be, things, little changes like that are behavior changes in our environment. They often go unnoticed. Or when they're noticed, then it's like, okay, good. Now I see what you're going to do. I see what the family jewels. I see what you're trying to protect, and I'll go after that.
So are you saying they're kind of almost reverse engineering their attack? They're putting something out there, seeing how you adjust to it, and then adjusting their attack to compensate for what you're doing.
Exactly. And as I say, when I have public chats, most of us in cybersecurity are good people. We have no reason to think like a bad guy. we really don't. And so bad people, they put this, as I mentioned before, they put these lures out there and see very patiently, look at what people are doing. But cybersecurity teams, every so often it pays off to think like a bad guy and say, hey, what will I go after here? What are we trying to protect? And frankly, all joke aside, when we're looking at a risk assessment, that's what we're trying to accomplish. What are we protecting, and if we find a vulnerability, if we find a deficiency, how are we going to address it?
No, great point. You brought up ransomware, so I have to ask. It's the same thing I ask everybody that comes on the show. If you are attacked and you get this ransomware notice, do you pay or not? What's your take on it?
I will give you my editorial comment. Is what is your what do you want to get hit again? If you pay it, you basically open the doors, because this is a two-pronged approach. In reality, in smaller shops or in some smaller operations, once they get hit, they have no other option but to pay. But what happens after? What are you going to do after? I mean, now, if you get hit 3-4 times and you continue to pay the ransom, I mean, somebody's taking notice, and all that's going to happen is that you're going to become the go-to guy when they go to attack. But yeah, in some instances, we will like everybody to do those risk assessments. Essentially create controls around all the most known vectors, protect themselves. But if you get hit, there's no other option. Pay, release your data, and then implement the controls.
Yeah. We hear kind of conflicting reports. I'd be curious to hear what you know. What is the frequency in terms of getting all of that data back? We've seen it as low as 1 in 4. We've seen it as high as 9 in 10. What are you seeing? How frequently if you pay the ransom, do you get everything back that you're supposed to?
It's all over the place, because the reality is going back to us as citizens, we don't think like bad guys. But you're negotiating with a bad agent. You're expecting that somebody that try to harm your operation, that even perhaps try to put something out there to harm people, because it does happen, and you're expecting, because you pay them, they're gonna stop doing it, or they're gonna give you back what they stole from you, or whatever damage they did to the environment, they're gonna fix it. So the chances of that happening is like in the good old days. Not a good old days, but in some other instances that you don't negotiate with terrorists. That's the bottom line. And this is what happening, right? They are inflicting terror on your organization. So it's a crapshoot. Are you going to get it back? I mean, if I ask you for $50,000, we buy away, Jeff, hey, give me $50,000 now, and I'll be a good boy. That's basically what we're saying.
Yeah. Well, I think that's in some instances it's easier to do that because there's a lot more cyber insurance that's being brought to play where people feel they're covered. They can cash in that policy and hopefully just pay it off and get their data back. But like you said, they may be setting themselves up to just continually be hit again and again. So interesting dynamic. So we've talked about the bad guys. Let's talk a little bit about the good guys. Carlos, what can you tell us a little bit about Fortinet and some of the things you guys are doing to help the industrial sector from a cybersecurity perspective?
Yeah, we internally, I lead the OT team for Fortinet in North America, and we have assembled a team of experts. They come from all walks of life. They have worked in most of the critical infrastructure as defined by Homeland Security. In addition, we have over 20 years of experience in cybersecurity. Over 50 products, and a good 2/3 of them, have been adapted to OT. To the point that we have taken our next generation firewall, our next generation security device, and adapted it to, rugged environments, so we can put them in places. I came from oil and gas. That's what the hard hat that's out there still hanging on the wall. Some of these devices, next generation devices, ruggedized, so you can put them in extreme temperatures, hot and cold. Push security as close to the devices that we're trying to protect. And of course, intelligence that is acquired from all that, being able to correlate it. So we have products that will correlate that information and make it more meaningful. And hopefully, by gathering that intelligence, you can prevent a potential breach.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. You guys put out a lot of great information, a lot of great research, and I actually got a chance to look at the reports you did later last year. And one of the stats that really jumped out at me was a finding that said that about 67% of OT security leaders are coming from the OT engineering background. And this is something we hear throughout the industrial sector. It's really difficult to find somebody with the right training and the right expertise to really help seal up a lot of these OT vulnerabilities and put plans in place specific for OT cybersecurity. Just curious, in working with the industrial sector and your background, What are you seeing there? Is there movement is there improvement in terms of the level of capabilities of people getting into OT security? Is that an ongoing challenge, or are there things that we can do to help the industry along?
Yeah, well, we see OT. I mean, it was like the stepchild of IT at some point. They didn't want to do that, but what we're seeing, as we said at the beginning of the conversation, I mean, it's moving front and center. So, I mean, OT security or industrial security, critical infrastructure security, however you want to call it, is moving under the CISO and ultimately under the CFO. So now, I mean, when there's a breach, it gets reported. In the case of publicly traded companies, the CISO and the CFO, I mean, they own the risk. So you're dealing with the consequences and the financial consequences of a potential breach. How's that going to impact the image of the company? So yeah, in the past, I mean, it used to be, hey, that is a small part of the operation. But no, I mean, now we see that OT and the assets that we're protecting in OT are the assets that they're the producing assets. This is where the money comes from. So it behooves us as practitioners in the case of companies, the CISO and the CFO, to dedicate the resources to protecting those assets. I mean, have clear data, have fidelity of data. That I don't want to say that in the past wasn't done, but it was done in batch. I mean, it wasn't done real time. So now we see that there is an industry drive as part of this digital transformation. I will do air quotes again, but as part of the digital transformation effort, protect those assets. And now it's not like one page in the company audits. It's not one page where you do risk analysis and assessments. Now it's an entire report is dedicated to finding vulnerabilities and how to remediate them.
Yeah. What do you think the ideal OT security candidate looks like? If they're just going to be focused on OT, do they have some of that information technology background? Are they more of a plant floor engineer? Some sort of combination of both? Is it just a cross training exercise, or I don't know? Is there a secret sauce, so to speak, where we can find that ideal individual or create them in some way?
Find somebody that don't like to sleep. I mean, that's it. That's bottom line. Usually, what we see is I tell people there's a lot of good hands in IT that want to make the transition to OT. Why? There's a lot of experience, a lot of benefit that comes from the IT knowledge. I mean, for instance, automation in operational technology has a totally different connotation than it does in IT. I mean, so when we're talking that you have people that are not only willing to understand automation, the classic automation, I mean, like process automation that we have in IT, but I can actually automate some response and bring some of that new knowledge and new technologies, I mean, and mix the two. Somebody that's willing, first of all, I mean, you got 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? I mean, listen more and talk less, and understand the system, understand where the money's coming from, and more so, I mean, create the economic efficiencies and bring in all that IT knowledge and apply what is pertinent to OT. Not just bring a bunch of toys, but whatever is necessary in OT.
No, I think that's perfect. I like what you said about understanding where the money's coming from. That's a big deal, obviously, in manufacturing. A couple other topics I just kind of want to throw at you, Carlos, and if you have some feedback, we'd love to hear in terms of your background and expertise. When it comes to cybersecurity, we're hearing more and more about stuff that is sort of an international flavor. Either it's got a nation state origin, or we're just seeing some of these sort of global organizations, kind of what we were talking about before. They're probing and they're finding soft spots here and there. From an international perspective, what are you hearing? Is manufacturing kind of a hot target for a lot of these international hackers? Is it continuing to be more nation state focused, or what are you seeing?
Again, a little column A, a little column B. Yeah. If you move back to 2020, when COVID hit us, we had issues of manufacturing, and in fact, their supply chain was affected. We had hits on our gas infrastructure. I mean, there was pipeline infrastructure. We got hit by that. There were other subsequent attacks on the meat supply. And they say, you can take away my gasoline, you can take my natural gas, but you don't take away my hamburgers. I mean, come on. And all this happened because we had a state of the country in itself, the world in itself, really, I mean, was in a state of flux. I mean, we were in a state of disarray, and everybody got they found that there were some areas in all walks of life that got affected. And cybersecurity was one of them. There were a lot of people, a lot of companies that they didn't have a remote work policy. And next thing you know, I mean, you have to work remotely, and what do you do then? So yeah, moving quickly always leaves a window open for the bad guys, where you got to do something hastily. I mean, without proper planning. So yeah, the nation states, I mean, they're still there. I mean, as practitioners, I always recommend that when you do those security assessments, determine what locations you need to access. If you have one part of the organization, you have a set of PLCs for the sake of argument, that all of a sudden start making calls to a potential nation state or an unfriendly country. I will start, asking, hey, why is this making this call all of a sudden to a country that is in the no call list or something like that? So geofencing, all those things. I mean, I know that in the space of time or the time allotted here, we can discuss all of them. But yeah, a risk assessment is important. I mean, reduce the risk, and more so, in the end, do some type of segmentation. Take those assets and segment it. You want to have visibility, you want to have control of them, but you want to make sure that you have who needs access to that, control access to that part of the company. You control access as to where the devices internally need to communicate, and more so, anything that doesn't conform with that criteria, start looking into it.
No, great advice. I like it. One of the other last topics I wanted to get to is just kind of your take on this whole element of transparency in working with manufacturers or working with the industrial sector. Do you put some of that into that plan, into that response plan, in terms of sharing some of that information about how you were hit, how you responded, what the dynamics of the attack were, so that your peers can also understand the right steps to take, and hopefully as a community we kind of move forward against the bad guys as a united front? Or do you have to be more careful about how much information you share? Because like we talked about before, maybe the hackers can learn from that and share that information as well. So I guess what I'm asking is, what level of transparency makes sense in terms of being helpful without hurting the organization at the same time?
Yeah, I think a lot of organizations are a little bit more open than they used to be in terms of sharing. Now, there is some reputation that goes with a hack, right? I mean, if you have a publicly traded company and some of the assets or they were left out in the open, divulging too much about the breach, might have some reputational consequences. However, there's a lot of companies that they publish not only what the attack was, but how they mitigated it. And at that point, those cases exist out there where people are being a little bit more transparent. There's the local ISACs and stuff like that. I mean, those organizations that they come in. Yeah, it's not share it with the world, but at least you share it with the communities of interest. And it can be, you can put the cases out there. I mean, it don't have to be specific to the company. It can be as a use case and a response.
No, I agree 100%. Just editorializing a little bit, I think that's the way we're going to move forward as an industry. I mean, when you see how highly the level at which all of these attacks are occurring and with the increased level that they're occurring more frequently, I think we do have to start sharing information a little bit more in order to shut them down a little bit, or at least slow them down.
I agree.
Last question here, Carlos. As we look to the future, maybe the next 12 or 18 months, any specific trends that you're identifying or sort of giving more attention right now in working with the industrial sector?
It's interesting because, and a really good question. We deal with companies of all sizes, all verticals. I mean, transportation, energy, manufacturing, healthcare, and some organizations that you think that because of their size, they're so sophisticated and have a really advanced security program, they're starting. But now, I guess going back to square one, now they're having those discussions because they say, hey, maybe we are the target here. I mean, we need to look at this. And we see that there are companies that have flat networks. Even to today, I know it sounds kind of silly, but really large organizations that if you get in the guard shack and you take control of a computer in the guard shack, you can see computers in the production side. Yeah. That in itself is an issue. So we see a lot of drive towards segmentation, micro segmentation, Defining, the data flows from east to west and north to south and how to control that. What happens if there's a breach? Microsegmentation as a proactive approach to reduce the blast radius, for lack of a better term. So that's what we see a lot. We see a lot of people utilizing architecture or standard architecture models like the Purdue model or IEC 62443 and implement that in their organizations. And then, more advanced tools like event correlation tools, visibility tools that they can get all the data sources and do some predictive analysis as to what might happen next. I'm really encouraged what the future brings for operational technology. We're really eager to work with just about everybody that wants to improve their security posture. And again, and thanks for having me. That's the big thing. Thanks for the opportunity to talk to you.
Thanks, Carlos. For more information on the work Fortinet does, you can check them out at www.fortinet.com. That's FORTINET.com. Thanks for joining us today, and to catch up on past episodes, you can go to manufacturing.net, IEN.com, or mbtmag.com. You can also check Security Breach out wherever you get your podcasts, including Apple, Amazon, and Overcast. And if you have a cybersecurity story or topic that you'd like to have us explore on Security Breach, you can reach me at jeff@IEN.com. For Carlos Sanchez, I'm Jeff Ranke, and this has been Security Breach.